My name is Patricia Williams. If you had asked me before that night, I would have said my life was steady, predictable in the best way. I didn't realize how fragile that sense of stability was until everything cracked on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were supposed to be our thing. Not a holiday, not an anniversary, just a quiet agreement between me and my boyfriend Samuel Hart that no matter how loud the world became, we would always find our way back to each other in the middle of the week. I cooked, he picked the movie, and for a few hours the chaos outside our apartment didn't matter. That evening felt no different at first. The scent of garlic and thyme warmed the kitchen, drifting through the apartment like an old memory. The sauce, simmering on the stove, bubbled softly, a comforting rhythm I'd come to associate with peace. I moved around the counter with a familiar ease, chopping parsley, lowering the heat, swaying absently to the soft hum of a late evening radio playlist. But when Samuel walked through the door, the atmosphere shifted. He didn't enter with the tired slump of a long day. He came in charged like he had stepped out of a spotlight instead of an office. His hair was styled again, the collar of his shirt crisp, and he smelled faintly of the cologne he wore on weekends, not workdays. And more telling than all of that, he was smiling at his phone. "Hey," I said, giving the sauce one more stir as I leaned in for a greeting. He angled his cheek toward me, not rudely, but distractedly, eyes still scanning whatever was on the screen. "Hey, smells amazing, by the way." I tried to ignore the way his energy felt misaligned with our usual Tuesday comfort. "Almost ready," I said, just letting the sauce reduce. His phone buzzed again, another smile. He finally put the phone down, long enough to pull off his blazer and loosen his tie. "Great day today," he said, running a hand through his hair with unnecessary flair. "Oh," I asked lightly. "Want to tell me about it?" "Yeah. Jade closed that huge marketing deal she's been chasing. The energy in the office was insane." His grin widened. "We're celebrating tonight." There it was, Jade. The name always arrived like a chill under the door. Jade Bennett, his best friend. His favorite coworker. The woman who texted him at 6 a.m. and midnight with equal enthusiasm. The woman whose innocent inside jokes with him grew sharper over time. A year ago, her name hadn't meant anything to me. Now it felt like a warning. "Oh," I said carefully. "Celebrating? Where?" "At her place." He said it so casually it almost sounded normal. She finally finished building that insane home theater she's been bragging about. New projector, surround sound that could rattle bones. I've been dying to see it. The clock on the microwave blinked 10:43 p.m. Tonight, I asked, unable to keep the edge of disbelief from my tone. "It's Tuesday, Samuel, and you have a meeting at 9 tomorrow." He waved a hand dismissively. "Come on, Pat. It's just a movie night. Live a little." Live a little. The phrase hit harder than it should have, mostly because I knew exactly where it came from. It was Jade's favorite line, tossed around like a philosophical lesson she alone had mastered. Jade with her curated spontaneity and drama-soaked storytelling. Jade who believed emotions were meant to be loud and messy and schedules were for boring people. I looked at him, really looked, the excitement lighting up his face. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for our ritual. It was for her. "Samuel," I said softly, "it's almost 11. He rolled his eyes, a gesture that used to be playful but lately had turned cutting. "Don't start. It's not a big deal." She ordered takeout from that fancy Thai place and we're doing a double feature. I'll probably crash there if it gets too late. The words slid out like they were perfectly reasonable. In that moment, something inside me went still. Not shattered, not furious, just quiet. Quiet in the way a storm pauses right before it decides whether it will break a window or tear down a house. So I said, "You're choosing Jade over our night." His jaw tightened. "I am choosing fun. You take everything so seriously. Jade knows how to unwind. He stopped himself, but the damage landed anyway. The radio hummed behind us. The sauce bubbled one last time. And I realized with a clarity that chilled me that our relationship had shifted long before tonight. He had simply stopped pretending. Every possible reaction flickered in me. Anger, heartbreak, disappointment. A plea for him to reconsider. I could have told him how much this hurt. I could have asked him why our Tuesdays didn't matter anymore. But any argument I made, any pain I showed, would end up as a joke he shared with Jade later. So I took a slow breath, steadying myself against the counter. "Okay," I whispered. He blinked. "Okay, what?" "Go," I said simply. "Have fun." For the first time that night, Samuel looked unsure, as if my calmness disrupted the script he'd prepared in his mind. He had expected a fight, maybe even welcomed one. What he got instead was permission. Permission he didn't deserve. but which freed me more than it freed him. Right, he muttered. I will. And he left. The door didn't slam, it clicked shut, soft final, like the end of a sentence neither of us intended to write. I stood alone in the quiet kitchen for a long moment. Then I turned off the stove. Empty quiet filled the room. Purpose settled into my bones. I walked to the closet, pulled out my luggage, unzipped it on the bed, and began packing calmly, methodically, without bitterness or hesitation. This wasn't a reaction. It was a conclusion. Before I left, I wrote a single note on the pad beside the stove and propped it against the pot of untouched sauce. Hope the movie was worth it. The sequel's called Moving Out. The first thing I remember feeling after closing the apartment door behind me wasn't sadness. It was weightlessness, a strange, steady calm that settled over me, like I'd stepped out of a tight, airless room into open space. The hallway outside Arnaud. His apartment was silent at that hour. I could still smell the faint trace of thyme and garlic clinging to my sweater, the last proof of a dinner that never became a memory. I didn't look back through the peephole. There was nothing I needed to see. Nothing left for me in that space. My car sat under the flickering street lamp out front. By the time I loaded my bags into the trunk, a cool mist had begun to fall, dusting the street in a sheen that made the city lights shimmer. It felt like the world was exhaling with me. I drove across town to my friend Mara's apartment. She was the one person who had seen the slow unraveling, who'd watched me dim my own light just to keep Samuel's world steady. When I knocked on her door at almost 2 a.m., she opened it without hesitation, her expression shifting from groggy to concerned in an instant. "You're staying here," she said softly. And she didn't ask a single question. Not then, not when I walked past her into the spare room, not when she saw the suitcase. I was grateful for that. The guest room was small, but the moment I sat on the bed, it felt like a sanctuary. The silence was different here. No tension, no buzzing, undercurrent of resentment, no anticipation of a door unlocking at midnight. Just quiet. Honest quiet. I lay back on the pillows, fully expecting tears to come. They didn't. All I felt was clarity. For years, I had mistaken endurance for love. I had absorbed comments that chipped away at my confidence, accepted shifts in his behavior that piece by piece rewired the way I saw myself. I had allowed myself to believe that our relationship was stable simply because I was the one constantly stabilizing it. Tonight had made one thing unbearably clear: I was the only one fighting to keep it alive. The next morning, long before the sun had fully risen, I slipped out of bed and sat by the window. Soft gray light crept into the room. For the first time in months, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like possibility. I messaged my landlord as soon as the clock hit 8. I didn't give details, just said I needed to end the lease early and would pay the penalty. I transferred my share of the last month's rent and utilities into my and Samuel's joint account. No loose ends. No excuses for him to claim I'd left him with chaos. Then I blocked him. Phone, email, social media, everything. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because I knew what would come next. The confusion, the indignation, the attempts to reel me back in. And I couldn't give him access to me, not even a sliver of space to enter my peace. He had already taken so much. By noon, the first wave hit anyway. A voicemail from an unknown number, his voice tight, irritated, trying to mask panic. "Patricia, where are you?" "The apartment is empty. This isn't funny. Call me back." I deleted it instantly. An hour later, another unknown number, this time sharper. "Okay, I get it. You're mad. You made your point. Now can you please call me Jade says, honestly, it's really immature." Even hearing her name spoken out loud made something in me go still. I deleted that one too. Mara watched all of this from across the kitchen island, her coffee mug in hand, eyes narrowed. "Let him burn himself out," she said. "Block every number you don't recognize." So I did. Every time a strange number buzzed, I sent it to voicemail without hesitation. And the messages kept coming. By evening, Mara slid her phone across the counter toward me with a heavy sigh. "You should hear this," she said. "It's from Jenny. She's in Samuel's group chat." I pressed play. Jenny's voice was barely a whisper over the line. "Hey, so Samuel's been telling people you had some kind of emotional breakdown and just disappeared. He's saying you've always been insecure and you finally snapped. It's bad." I closed my eyes for a moment, not in shock, just resignation. Of course he was rewriting the story. Of course he was framing himself as the victim. He needed people to believe he'd done nothing wrong, that I was the problem, that Jade wasn't a threat but a harmless friend, and I had simply been too sensitive to understand. Let him talk. Let him craft whatever version of the truth helped him sleep at night. I wasn't playing in his story anymore. That night after dinner, Mara sat beside me on the couch. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. For the first time in a long time, I didn't have to think about the answer. "I am," I said. "I really am." And I meant it. The clarity in my chest was steady, quiet, but firm. I felt like I'd stepped out of a maze I didn't even realize I'd been trapped in. 2 days later, more updates trickled in from friends who still orbited the same social circles as Samuel. The narrative he was spinning was unraveling fast. People were noticing gaps in his stories. Jade's name kept surfacing in uncomfortable ways. And then the shift happened, at last, the part that felt like something out of a dramatic screenplay, except it was real. Someone saw Samuel and Jade together at a bar. Not the fun celebratory version he'd painted, not excitement, not sparks, not chemistry. Just tension, frustration, distance. Jade apparently had not been the golden success story she painted herself to be. Her big marketing deal inflated. The company she bragged about, not thrilled with her sudden ego boost. The reputation she'd built already crumbling. And Samuel, who'd run toward her like she was freedom, was now stuck with the reality he'd traded me for. A storm of embarrassment, financial stress, and social fallout circled him like vultures. I listened to all of this while sitting at Mara's kitchen table, stirring honey into my tea. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vindication. I felt distance, a clean, quiet distance I'd earned. By the end of the week, I had signed a lease on a new apartment across town, a small one-bedroom with tall windows and morning light. A place for me and only me. The life I was beginning to build there wasn't loud or grand. It was simple, peaceful, mine. And as that peace settled in, I knew one thing for certain. Samuel wasn't done trying. The first sign that Samuel's world was starting to crumble didn't come from him. It came from a friend of a friend, the kind of person who normally stayed miles away from drama, but apparently couldn't resist sharing this particular update. I was unpacking the last box in my new apartment, my drafting tools, a few books, a single photo of me and my parents when Mara walked in holding her phone like it was carrying state secrets. "Patricia," she said, lowering her voice, even though it was just the two of us. "Sit." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm fine. Just tell me." She shook her head. "No, you'll want to sit." So I did, carefully, slowly, and she hit play on a voice note she'd just received. It was from Caleb, a guy who used to hang out with Samuel on weekends, a guy who always made bland diplomatic jokes to avoid taking sides, the kind of person who would never speak up unless something truly wild happened. "Okay, listen." Caleb's voice crackled through the speaker. "You didn't hear this from me, but Samuel and Jade were at Carbon Bar last night and it was bad. Like embarrassingly bad. She was crying. He was staring at his phone. They weren't even together, just kind of stranded in the mess they made." He paused. "And Jade told someone loudly that she didn't sign up for a boyfriend. Her words. She said Samuel was just supposed to be fun, casual, a distraction. She didn't want commitment. She didn't want drama. She didn't want him." Mara covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes huge. I just sat there, still, breathing. Caleb continued, sounding almost bewildered. And, apparently Jade's big deal collapsed. Her client found out she exaggerated her role. They dropped her team. Her company might fire her. She's losing it. Samuel looked miserable. I don't know, it was messy. The message ended. Mara set the phone down slowly. "Patricia, are you okay?" I nodded. Yes. And that was the truth. Because as she stared at me with sympathy waiting for anger or vindication or sadness, all I felt was a distant, clean understanding. Like watching a storm from behind a thick glass window. You see the lightning, hear the thunder, but it no longer reaches you. None of this surprised me. Not the collapse, not the crying, not the tension, not the sudden exposure of Jade's lie. People who build their importance out of smoke and theatrics eventually choke on their own performance. I just hadn't expected it to happen so fast. The next week passed quietly. I settled into my new apartment one room at a time, savoring the first moments of a space that didn't have to be negotiated, compromised, or explained. I bought a leather chair. I'd always wanted. Samuel once said it was too serious looking. I hung up the abstract painting he hated because he didn't get it. I put plants near the window, even though he claimed greenery made his allergies flare. Every choice was a small reclamation of parts of myself I'd muted around him. I went running in the mornings. I sketched at night. I slept without waiting to hear someone unlock the door at 1 a.m. Peace became a physical presence in my home, a quiet companion, a soft breathing thing. But on the fourth morning, while I was stretching before a run, my phone buzzed with a message from Mara. He started phase 1. I already knew what she meant. Samuel wouldn't go quietly. People like him never did. I opened the voicemail she forwarded. Samuel's voice cracked slightly at the edges, as if he was aiming for calm but couldn't quite hold the tone. Patricia, it's me. Look, we need to talk. I don't know where you are, but this is childish. We were together for 2 years. Don't I at least deserve a conversation? I deleted it. That afternoon came phase 2. Another voicemail forwarded again, because all numbers tied to him were blocked. His voice was softer now, wrapped in the kind of nostalgia that could make strangers cry. Hey, I was cleaning and found that playlist you made for our first road trip. Remember that? You were so nervous to drive in the rain. I kept teasing you. God, we laughed so hard. I miss that. I miss... Delete. He didn't miss me. He missed the version of himself he was able to be because I was doing all the emotional work. The next day brought phase 3. This time from an unblocked number, Mara's phone. She handed it to me with a raised eyebrow. Just answer. Trust me. I pressed accept. Patricia. The voice was sharp, irritated. Samuel's sister, Leah. I leaned against the counter. What do you want? Look! She began, her tone landing somewhere between guilt-tripping and scolding. Samuel messed up, okay? But he's heartbroken. Completely shattered. He's been through a lot lately. Jade manipulated him. You know how she is. I didn't answer. Leah continued, exasperated. A real woman would forgive him, you know. He needs you. You're the stable one. You're supposed to help him through this. I laughed quietly without humor. Leah, I said, I am being the stable one. By staying far away from your brother. She sputtered. You're really going to throw everything away just like that? No, I said calmly. He did that for me. And I hung up. Mara burst out laughing the moment the call ended. I just took a sip of my coffee. It was almost peaceful watching their attempts bounce off the walls of the life I was rebuilding. Almost. Because phase 4 came next. The ugliest phase. A string of texts from a burner number, each more venomous than the last. So that's it. You're a coward. You never loved me. You're heartless. You're pathetic. You'll regret this. I read them all with a neutral face, almost fascinated. His shift from charm to cruelty was so predictable it felt scripted. This was Samuel without an audience. This was Samuel without control. This was Samuel exposed. I didn't block that number, not immediately. I let the messages pile up, each one confirming what I'd felt for months. Then I deleted the entire thread. Blocked. Gone. The silence that followed was deeper than before. He had exhausted every tactic except the one he avoided most, facing himself. I thought that would be the end of it. But life has a way of delivering finales with dramatic timing. Exactly 3 months after I walked out of our apartment, I returned home from a late gym session. The drizzle had returned, soft silvery rain that blurred the streetlights and made everything glow. I was thinking about a renovation project I wanted to start. I was thinking about how quiet and good my life felt. Then I saw the silhouette. A figure standing near the entrance of my building, unmoving, watching. My heart didn't race. My steps didn't falter. I already knew who it was. Samuel stepped into the street lamp's glow. Rain collecting in his hair, his hoodie soaked, his expression hollow, stripped of the arrogance, the excuses, the performative bravado. He looked nothing like the man who left my apartment that night. Patricia, he said quietly, his voice raw. Please, we have to talk. Rain slid down Samuel's face, dripping from his nose, gathering in the folds of his soaked hoodie, turning him into a shape carved out of regret. I stopped a few feet away from him, not out of fear, but out of clarity. He wasn't a danger. He wasn't a threat. He was just a man who had finally run out of people to lie to. We don't need to talk, I said softly. He shook his head with a desperate, jerky motion. Please, Patricia, just hear me out. The drizzle intensified, speckling his eyelashes, making his voice crack. He had always hated the rain. It made him feel small, he once told me. I didn't step closer or offer shelter. I wasn't going to rescue him from a storm he built. He swallowed hard. Everything fell apart. Jade lied to me, used me, embarrassed me in front of everyone. My friends, God, half of them won't even talk to me. I lost so much because of her. His voice broke. And because of you leaving, I lost you. I lost us. He took a tiny step forward, hands trembling. I know I messed up. I know I took you for granted. I should have fought harder for us. I should have... Samuel, I interrupted gently. Stop. His breath hitched. He waited. This isn't about Jade, I said. Not really. Not anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. He blinked, confused. You didn't lose me because she lied, I said quietly. You lost me because you did. His shoulders collapsed, a visible sinking. For a moment, he wasn't the Samuel who had rolled his eyes at my boundaries, or the Samuel who had blamed my concerns on insecurity, or the Samuel who had brushed off my hurt like it was inconvenience. For a moment, he was just a man facing consequences for the first time in his life. I'm sorry, he whispered. I swear to God, Patricia, I'm so sorry. I will do anything. Anything. Just don't walk away. The street was empty, except for the two of us. Cars passed in the distance, their tires hissing over wet pavement. A dog barked somewhere far away. Time slowed in the way it does before something irreversible. I held his gaze. You think I walked away 3 months ago, I said. But the truth is, I left long before I packed that suitcase. He stared at me, breath shallow. I left the night you chose Jade over me. Without a second thought, I continued. I left every time you dismissed my feelings. I left when you started making me question my own worth, just to protect your ego. The rain drummed softly between us. I fought for us, Samuel, I said. Alone. And I'm done fighting battles I didn't start. He dragged a shaking hand through his wet hair. I can be better. Just give me a chance to prove it. You had many, I said simply. You ignored all of them. For a moment, I thought he might cry. Instead, he whispered, Broken, don't you love me anymore? It was a child's question. The last weapon someone uses when all others fail. I took a slow breath, not to calm myself, but because I wanted my answer to be honest. I love my peace more. His mouth fell open slightly, but no sound came out. I stepped past him, moving toward the building entrance. He didn't reach for me. Maybe he finally understood how fragile the line was between desperation and disrespect. Patricia, he said softly. I paused. Please, don't go inside. His voice was barely a whisper. If I walk away right now, I won't survive this. I turned just enough to look at him, soaked, defeated, hollowed out by his own choices. You will, I said. You just won't survive as the person you were. That's the point. He flinched. It wasn't cruelty. It was truth. I moved toward the door again. His final words followed me like a last attempt to pull me back into a story I no longer belonged to. I loved you the best way I knew how. I didn't turn. The way you knew how I said wasn't enough. The lobby door clicked shut behind me, sealing him out in the rain and sealing my life in with the peace I had chosen. I didn't check the window. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't replay the conversation. I walked to my apartment, peeled off my damp jacket, and hung it by the heater. I made tea. I turned on a soft lamp. I sat in my leather chair and listened to the gentle hum of the world outside. My phone stayed silent. My heart stayed calm. And for the first time since everything began, the quiet wasn't an absence, it was a beginning. The rain didn't stop for hours. It drummed against the windows of my apartment in a steady rhythm, like a reminder that the world outside was still unraveling, even though mine had finally settled. I sat in my chair, knees drawn close, tea warming my hands, listening to the quiet hum of my new life. I didn't check my phone. I didn't open the blinds. I didn't replay Samuel's words in my head the way I used to. The peace felt earned, not gifted, not coincidental, but something I had carved out of months of exhaustion, clarity, and grit. A peace that existed because I had chosen it. When the rain finally softened to a mist, I stood and stretched, expecting to feel some kind of emotional aftermath. Guilt, fear, doubt, something. But there was only calm. I washed my mug, I brushed my teeth, I went to bed. And I slept deeply, uninterrupted, dreamlessly, for the first time in so long. Samuel didn't try to contact me again the next morning, or the day after, or the week after. Not directly, anyway. What did arrive slowly, quietly, almost embarrassingly, were the ripples of the choices he'd made. Word travels fast when a narrative collapses, when the crazy emotional X story began to fall apart under the weight of his own contradictions, when the people who had once entertained his excuses started asking questions he couldn't answer. From the outside, it looked like Samuel had simply lost control of the story. But from where I stood, watching all of this unfold from a distance, it looked more like he was finally meeting himself. One night, Mara came over with takeout wearing a look that told me she had news, but also knew I didn't want it. Just say it, I sighed, reaching for a spring roll. She hesitated. Okay, Jade left town. I blinked. We left. Moved out of her apartment. Her company fired her. She's staying with her parents 2 states away. The woman crashed hard, Patricia. I didn't react. Not outwardly, not inwardly either. And Samuel, I asked. Mara chewed slowly, searching for the right phrasing. He's quiet. Quiet, a word that had once terrified him. Now it was the only thing he had left. I pushed my food around my plate, not hungry anymore. Is he okay? It's not your job to worry about that, she said carefully. I know. But knowing didn't erase the echo of his face in the rain, hollowed, shaken a man realizing far too late what he'd thrown away. Days turned into a month. I settled deeper into my new routines. Running at dawn, drafting for hours, reading at night, exploring the quiet streets around my building. My apartment slowly became a reflection of everything I had muted for years, warm, colorful, grounded. A life shaped by choice, not compromise. Sometimes, when the city was quiet and the hum of traffic softened, a thought would flicker through me like static. He might try again, but he didn't. Not even once. The silence wasn't ominous, it wasn't threatening, it was acceptance. Something in Samuel had finally broken. Not in a tragic, melodramatic way, but in the way a person inevitably shatters when the mirror they've been holding up to others finally turns back on them. And I didn't need to witness the aftermath to know that he was learning his lesson the hardest way possible. 3 months after that rainy night, I found myself standing on my balcony during golden hour, the sun warming the bricks of the building across from mine, the city humming softly below. My phone buzzed, an unknown number, but the tone of it, not desperate, not persistent, made my stomach feel strangely still. I let it go to voicemail. Then, after a moment, curiosity nudged me. I listened. Patricia, it's Caleb. I blinked in surprise. I hadn't spoken to him since before the breakup. I'm not calling to give you updates or gossip, he continued. I just wanted to say something. A pause, soft, almost embarrassed. I didn't get it before he said. I didn't understand why you left. But now, yeah, I get it. You did the right thing. For yourself. Another pause. And I think Samuel finally gets it too. The message ended. I stood there on the balcony, the warm breeze brushing my hair, listening to the city shift into evening. I didn't replay the message. I didn't analyze it. I just let it drift. Because the truth was simple. I didn't need Samuel's understanding. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need closure from him. I'd given it to myself. Later that night, I made tea and settled into my leather chair. The same chair he once mocked, calling it too serious, too cold. But it wasn't cold now. It felt like home. I looked out at the city lights through the rain-speckled glass, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that didn't depend on anyone else. Hope that didn't hinge on a relationship or validation or promises someone might break. Hope that came from myself. My story hadn't ended that night I walked out of the apartment. It had begun. And the sequel, the one unfolding in this quiet space filled with soft lamps and morning drafts and choices that belonged solely to me, wasn't about revenge at all. It was about rebirth. It was about building a life with the one person who had never abandoned